Binder, pero hasta ahora aquí en este plató de Business Connection en Negocios Televisión recibimos a nuestro siguiente invitado, es Gabriel Micheli, CFA, gestor de Pictet Regeneration. Gabriel, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on Negocios Television today.
Good to be here.
What is the significance of COP15 in relation to biodiversity?
We think it's very significant. I mean, biodiversity is a theme that has not been talked about too much. We talk a lot about climate change, but there is also another COP, one is on climate change, but there is another one on biodiversity. And that one, the 15th, has led to a global framework in December of last year. And that has, most countries have signed this. And there are many goals that they want to have and some targets that should lead to much more protection. Today, if you take land, about 17% is protected, the seas about 10%, but the target is to have 30% protected by 2030. So we have that, and we have many plans there to reduce waste, for example, to reduce pesticide use. Obviously these targets are there for the long term, but we see many countries, either in Europe, in the United States, or in Asia, who are actually activating those targets and having concrete plans to improve things. So we think it's not just a framework, it's something that we will see in the economy, and the world will have to change to improve biodiversity. I don't know if you know, but for biodiversity, we have been losing biodiversity on a quite massive scale over the last years. Scientists have been looking at wild animal population, and we have lost around 70% of them over the last 50 years. So that's something that is quite staggering, and we don't really notice in a way. But our economy completely depends on nature. About half of global GDP is dependent on nature and on its services. We usually take it for granted. It can be fresh water, it can be clean air, but also pollination from bees and things like this. So usually there is enough of it, but at some point, if you don't have it, then it disappears and it becomes a big problem, threatening our economy.
Gabriel, how does the loss of biodiversity affect the investment process? How can investors contribute to the protection of biodiversity?
We think that there are ways to measure biodiversity. It is relatively complex. It's the genetic diversity. It can be species diversity, or diversity of ecosystems. But at Pictet, we have been looking at biodiversity and developing methodology, a full life cycle analysis of companies. Understanding what are the products used to create a product, what is the use of a product actually creating in terms of biodiversity loss. And when we measure that, we can actually find the companies that have the most neutral or potentially positive impact on biodiversity. So I think there are different categories. The first thing you want to do, 90% of biodiversity loss is because of the use of resources. We extract resources all the time, and we lose a lot of biodiversity because of that. So we need to limit this. So we should use less, be more efficient. We should use longer, not buy clothes and throw them away. I think today, when I was born around 40 years ago, people would use 5 times less clothes than today. So it's kind of really becoming an issue. So using things longer is important, and then reusing them or repurposing them into something else. So first we limit the damage, and a circular economy will help us do that. And then finding some product or something like regenerative agriculture, where you actually produce, for example, food, but instead of creating CO2 emissions while producing it, you're actually stocking CO2 in the soil. You have a better quality of soil, better quality of food. Water will stay longer. You have a lot of benefits that you can do while producing a product. So what we're trying to do is to find companies that actually have also a positive impact on biodiversity while they do this. And the third pillar is actually the social foundation of society. We think if you don't include everyone in the economy, if not everyone has a good job, has enough to eat, biodiversity will not be the main concern. So we really need to take that into account and raise awareness on environmental issues too. So any companies, we find quite a lot. We have found around 600 companies providing solutions for that. We think with an agreement on biodiversity, it's just physics. If we lose this biodiversity, we'll have to do something for it. And we think this decade or the next ones will be very, will concentrate on biodiversity as one of the major themes.
What are the risks and opportunities associated with investing in companies that have a positive impact on biodiversity?
But the risk and opportunity is about like investing in stocks. Globally, we invest everywhere. We have probably a tilt towards information technology, industrials or materials or industries that provide solutions that are kind of different. So you have the risk is about investing the economic cycles that we have. But whether we are in a booming economy or whether we don't know, like today, are we going into a recession or not? We think the companies in our universe will tend to have a bit more growth than the market, and it's not yet recognized by it. So the additional growth is really a big opportunity for us, for these companies, for these solutions providers, because whatever the economic environment, we should tend to see better opportunities for these companies.
Mm-hmm. How can investors incorporate environmental, social, ESG and governance considerations such as biodiversity into their investment decision-making progress?
Yeah, so we think it's important to include it. For us, we've created a strategy, where we have a universe of companies that already have a good footprint. We developed, quite a detailed methodology, as I was mentioning. We've done that for more than 10 years, but we're now going to the next step on biodiversity to understand where does the biodiversity loss come from. Is it land use? Is it water stress? Is it because of climate change, eutrophication, acidification? We're able to have different, to understand where the loss comes from, and then to know where in the world is the company active. There are some biodiversity hotspots, and there are others which are not as relevant. So understanding where that comes from is very important, and that helps us to see where are the best opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And the last, what is the focus of Pictet Regeneration's investment strategy, and how do they determine which companies to invest in?
So the focus is the regeneration of the planet and its people, essentially. So we want to limit the damage. We want to have a very healthy biodiversity on the planet, and we need very healthy people and thriving people to have this. So the methodology that we have created helps us to have the universe that has this, to understand how much impact the company has. The more impact, the more those trends will be good for a particular company. So we tend to have higher weights in those companies. And then we do a thorough ESG analysis also at the company level to understand the risk, the biodiversity risk or the dependencies on biodiversity. And obviously we engage with most of our companies to know what they can do better. And as biodiversity is a relatively young theme, how much they will publish on for the company to understand what is their biodiversity footprint is very important, and probably they will all also contribute to restore the planet over time. So we want to be partners with them on that too.
Thank you, Gabriel Micheli, CFA gestor de Pictet Regeneration. It has been very interesting. Thank you for being with us. And
thank you very much.
Good day and good business.
Thank you.
Y nosotros creo que ya podemos trasladarnos, volver a contactar